Okay, so welcome everyone. I am Shalu Ramchandani. I'm one of the internal medicine physicians at the lifestyle medicine team at MGH Cancer Center, and I am substituting today for Amy Commander, who couldn't be here in the afternoon, but I know she'll be watching this later. And I have the absolute honor to introduce our two lovely registered dietitians. Carol Sullivan, I have gotten to know over the years, and she is a registered dietitian with at least 15 years of experience practicing as a certified specialist in oncology nutrition at Mass General and as a senior clinical dietitian. She has been offering individual as well as group visits as the lead dietitian at the MGH Lifestyle Medicine Program. And Ashley Draviam is a senior clinical dietitian and also board certified specialist in oncology nutrition. And she's been at MGH for at least 10 years and has recently joined our lifestyle medicine program and also provides individualized nutrition care tailored to the needs of cancer patients and survivors. And Ashley also is a qualified bilingual staff and speaks Spanish as well. So I'm going to let them take it away because we have a lot to cover this hour on cancer fighting tips and tricks for your pantry.
Thank you so much, Shalu. Can you guys see the screen, the intro screen here?
Yep, it looks good.
Good, and hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. All right, so thank you, Shalu, for that wonderful, warm introduction. Welcome, everyone. We're so excited to share some of our favorite foods, tips, and tricks for stocking your pantry, fridge, and freezer. Today, we're going to talk a little bit, spend a little bit of time on slides, just a handful of slides to kind of give some context as to why we recommend these foods that we're talking about today. And I also want to take a moment just to acknowledge that people in the audience have unique nutrition needs, and in an individual visit, we can really take the time and tailor recommendations. So if you have really specific questions that are individualized to you, I encourage you to make an appointment and try not to ask those questions today. And we also want to ask you to please submit your questions in the chat and wait until the end of the presentation. We're going to have a little bit of time for questions. So today, we're really going to be talking about more generally ways to meet the nutrition recommendations that come from the American Institute for Cancer Research. Next slide here. So the American Institute for Cancer Research and the World Cancer Research Fund are the ones who comb through all of the literature on nutrition and cancer and came up with these lifestyle recommendations, which today we're going to be spending most of our time on this green bullet on the left that says eat a diet rich in whole grains, vegetable, fruit, and beans. So, and less time on the limiting consumption of fast food, other processed foods, high in fat, starches, and sugars. And then the recommendation for red meat is less than 12 to 16 ounces per week, which is about 3 to 4 decks of carbs, avoidance of processed meat. And then the next one being limiting consumption of added sugar from sugar drinks. We are going to be talking a little bit about how to label read for added sugar. And then we're also going to talk about ways to maybe substitute and cut down on alcohol consumption as well, just a couple tricks that Ashley and I have. So the AICR does recommend eating at least 3.5 to 5 cups of fruits and vegetables daily. That, along with whole grains and other plant foods, really sets up an eating pattern linked to lower risk of several cancers and also lower risk of other chronic diseases as well. And really this comes from the fact that plant foods are so high in fiber, which we know probably has a link to lowering inflammation in the body, and then all of those other nutrients that are in our plant foods, so things other than vitamins and minerals, are called phytonutrients that act as antioxidants and might have cancer protective properties. So Ashley and I are going to be talking phytonutrients or phytochemicals. We use those two words pretty interchangeably. So these are all the things that create color in our plant foods. So on that note, we're going to switch over to this plate planning from the American Institute. Oh, sorry, or from the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. This is their plate planning plate, which plate planning is a great way to set up your plate, where if you think about half the plate being fruits and vegetables, a quarter of the plate being some kind of whole grain, and then another quarter of the plate being protein, which the American College of Lifestyle Medicine really encourages a fully plant-based diet. So the proteins on this plate come from beans, nuts and seeds, and legumes, and some grains as well, which is a little bit different than the American Institute for Cancer Research, where they do consider poultry and fish to be neutral and can be part of overall healthy anti-cancer diet. So these images are from the American Institute for Cancer Research, where they have a nice way of showing you the progression of what your plate might look like, which I think is really important because everyone has unique nutrition needs and everyone is starting at a unique place in their nutrition journey. So on the left, we have the old American plate where you can see half the plate is red meat, and then other part of the plate is all starchy vegetable. There's a pat of butter on top, which is saturated fat, which we're trying to have less of in the diet. Red meat also, the carb that we see in red meat is saturated fat, which a little bit less of. So the transitional plate is nice because you can see that the red meat is a little bit less of a portion. Half the plate is a non-starchy vegetables from green beans, and then a quarter of the plate is a whole grain from brown rice. And there's even a little bit of parsley on top to add some visual interest, and herbs also pack some good nutrition as well. And then on the last plate, you can see this plate is just bursting with flavor and bursting with color. And even the chicken is covered in herbs and spices. And then the rest of the plate is vegetables, with a quarter of the plate being, I think, probably quinoa as a whole grain.
Carol,
Yeah.
just quick, we have your audio is a little bit choppy. Like we hear everything you're saying, but it's a little bit choppy. Maybe if you want to go on the phone and mute your computer and
Okay.
unmute on your phone, that might work better. See if that.
I was going to say, this plate's making me very hungry. It's so beautiful looking.
All right. That's where.
We want to make sure that we absolutely hear everything that Carol has to say.
Is that better?
It is better, I think.
So we're using the phone to highlight all of the foods. So we have the phone and the computer in the room. That should probably help. All right. Thank you. We'll bring the phone back in and shut the computer down. Thank you. So this next slide, we're just highlighting some of the pieces of the nutrition label, which can be really helpful to actually turn the package over and look at the nutrition label, and probably even more so the ingredient list. So we will talk a little about the label and the ingredient list today. And this is another great resource on the AICR's nutrition page that you can go to. But just quickly, if you were looking at the label, you want to start at the top by checking what the serving size is, and then take a peek at the calories depending on what your nutrition goal is, if lower calorie, higher calorie. And then the next piece being to really try to limit the added sugar and the salt, and then also looking at the saturated fat too, making sure that that is low. And then trans fat can be a little bit tricky because have trans fat in them, even though the label says 0. So you need to look in the ingredient list for that one, hydrogenated oils. But really, it's added sugar that we'll be talking about probably most today. And then making sure that you're getting enough fiber, which is the recommended daily amount of fiber that people should be getting is around 30 to 40 grams. And that this product has about 4. So we'll be talking about fiber. And if you are eating a plant forward diet, you're probably going to be eating a lot of fiber. And then the last slide that I'm going to talk about is the anatomy of a whole grain. A lot of people know what we say whole grain. So on the left, we have the anatomy of the outer portion, this dark called the bran, and that is fiber filled with B vitamins and other minerals. And then on the bottom portion, the germ portion of the grain is nutrient packed with B vitamins and E, phytochemicals, and healthy fats. So when we take off the bran and germ, we're left with refined grain that really just offers us kind of empty calories without a whole lot of nutrition, which is why we really like to emphasize grains. So next, we are going to have Ashley take over and get us started with items that we love in the pantry. So it might take a minute to reset up. Guys, a second.
So I think she's still cutting out a little bit. It's a little bit choppy, but I'm not really sure what else Carol and Ashley would be able to do on their end.
I think the phone should be better.
So she's not on the phone right now, right? Because that was facing the pantry.
Right, she was just on the computer, now she's on the phone. So
Hi. Hi. Hold on. There we go. How's that?
good, looks great.
And
Yeah,
you're hearing a little more transition
I
to
think
the phone.
so, yeah.
I think it's better.
Okay, great. I think you're good to go, Ashley.
All right. So thank you, Carol, for that awesome introduction and overview of what comprises a plant-based diet. So now let's dig into some of the specific products and recommendations that we can use to enhance the cancer-fighting properties of our diets. So Carol gave that great review of whole grains. And so I just wanted to say a brief note on carbohydrates. Carbohydrates often get a bad rap, but we know that there are myriad benefits of carbohydrates from whole food sources. So whole grains, fruits and vegetables, beans, legumes, and pulses. They're high fiber and plentiful in phytonutrients, providing them with anti-cancer properties. So let's start with some of the whole grains. As with whole grains, as with a lot of different foods that we're going to be talking about today, variety is key because each of these different grains have slightly different composition. So some may have more protein, more fiber, more specific vitamins or minerals. So examples of whole grains include farro, quinoa, barley, brown rice, millet. And I want to just take a look at this barley, for example. So I'm not sure if you can see the nutrition facts very well here, but I'll just read to you. This barley in a quarter cup dry, so that can be about a half a cup or a little less cooked, has 6 grams of dietary fiber. So if we're thinking about that 30 to 40 gram goal, that's a pretty good chunk from just a pretty small portion of this whole grain. And then additionally, there are also 5 grams of fiber. So the whole grain sources, as compared to refined grains, do tend to be higher, not only in fiber, but in protein. So making them an excellent choice to switch to. There are various options for quick cook whole grains, which make them a little more convenient and timely to make and to incorporate into your diet. I love this Trader Joe's. They make a 10-minute farro. That's super, super easy. Oatmeal is another one. I don't have that to show here, but everyone knows what oatmeal looks like. Very versatile, inexpensive. Dietitians love oatmeal. And one of the reasons that we love it is because it's really excellent at regulating bowels. All right, and then crackers. So most people have some crackers, some type of cracker in their cabinet. Carol's gonna grab me a couple samples here. Thank you, Carol. So what we want to look for with crackers are something like these ACMAC that are made with whole grains, or these Marigon crackers that are made with whole grains and then a bunch of seeds. So again, high fiber and a lot of those plant-based whole ingredients. Still get a crunch. And still get a crunch, exactly. Thank you. All right, on to proteins. So a lot of us think about proteins as foods like meat, chicken, fish, dairy, eggs, things that might belong in your refrigerator. But today we're going to talk about a variety of options of proteins that are shelf stable, can be a lot cheaper or more economical, and provide good variety and a lot of health benefits, particularly a lot of the plant-based proteins that you can find in your pantry to stock with. So one of the products that we really love are beans and lentils. So for example, this can of black beans or this can of chickpeas here. Chickpeas are one of my personal favorites for their versatility. So chickpeas, you can add to a salad to add some protein. They're a really good protein source in soups and stews. Or you could throw it in a blender if you have one with some olive oil and some fresh garlic cloves to make yourself a really delicious, quick and homemade hummus. All right, chickpea pasta is another way to get more of those legumes in that we're always trying to increase in our diet. Not sure if Carol has a sample of that, but. And then ground seeds, so ground flaxseed, hemp, chia seeds. Carol made this really good blend here of chia, hemp, and flaxseed. Great protein source, also super high in fiber. Additionally, these seeds all pack a really great punch of anti-inflammatory omega-3 fats. So again, talking about this whole plant-based diet, focusing on anti-inflammatory foods and dietary patterns, these are an easy way to get more plant foods just sprinkled in throughout your day. So for example, ground flax you can sprinkle onto a salad, stir into oatmeal or into hot cereals. You can throw seeds into a smoothie, or I love to make chia pudding for a quick, easy breakfast. You can make the night before, open up the fridge, and you have it to go. Nuts, like with all these foods we're talking about, the more variety, the better. So we have walnuts here as one example. We particularly love the nuts and seeds that are high in those, again, those anti-inflammatory omega-3s, like walnuts and pumpkin seeds. But there's lots of different options: Brazil nuts, almonds, pecans, pistachios. Fun fact about pistachios is they're high in melatonin. So if you're craving a salty or crunchy snack in the evening, maybe you grab a handful of pistachios and they'll help you fall asleep. And then of course, the nut butter option. So almond butter, peanut butter, sun butters, cashew butters, all great as a snack. One thing I was going to mention with the nuts is great to pair, for example, with a clementine or an apple or a piece of fruit for that balance and to get more of those fruit and veggies in a healthy, balanced snack. And then the last protein source we're going to talk about are canned fishes or pinned fishes. Most people are familiar with canned tuna or eat this on a regular basis. I also wanted to highlight canned salmon. So you can eat canned salmon the same way that you eat canned tuna, maybe make a salad to put on top of tuna salad or salmon salad to put on top of greens or make a sandwich with. I also like to use the canned salmon to make salmon burgers, easy, good dinner. And then if you're feeling a little more brave, maybe you want to try sardines. Excellent source. Again, all three of these fishes, excellent sources of those omega-3s we're talking a lot about, as well as calcium because of the skin and the bones that are in the sardines and in certain types of the canned salmon. And just on the note of fats, I've been talking a lot about these anti-inflammatory unsaturated omega-3s, as well as other fats from nuts and seeds like flaxseed and chia. And so I just wanted to highlight a few other healthy fats. Where'd those oils go? So Carol has here, thank you, Carol, olive oil and avocado oil. So those plant-based oils, also whole avocados are a great way to incorporate healthy fats into that anti-cancer diet. All right, fruits and vegetables. So dried fruit is a great way to increase your intake of fruits and vegetables. We have here mango and prunes as two examples. The one thing you want to look for with dried fruit is flip it over again, talking about looking at those added sugars. So mango is a great example. This one has 0 grams of added sugars, but you can find mango that has a lot of added sugar as well. So you just want to look at that and make that choice. And then again, pair those with nuts, for example, for a good balanced snack. There are a few options for canned vegetables or tomatoes, which are actually a fruit that can be a good way to get more vegetables, fruits in, or these artichokes here. The stewed or diced tomatoes can be great to include in recipes like soups and stews, or to substitute if you don't have any fresh tomatoes on hand. And then Carol brought over this great fruit bowl, fruit basket here. Leaving a fruit bowl out on your counter is a really good cue to increase your intake of fruits and vegetables. So we are primed to eat food when we see it. So if we leave healthy foods like fruits out on the counter, we're more apt to walk into the kitchen if we're hungry and grab a clementine or an apple here, rather than going to the cabinet and grabbing a handful of potato chips. Speaking of potato chips, yeah, thank you. Most people do have some snacks in their cabinet, right? And so while we're focusing on a predominantly whole food diet, snacks and some of those more processed foods can play a role and be a convenient way to get in even some healthy fruits and vegetables and legumes into our diet. The one thing is we really want to pay attention to the front of the packaging. So food companies are really good at marketing to us to try to convince us that these snacks are healthy. So it may say cauliflower chips or sweet potato crackers on the front. But then you have to do your research or your due diligence and turn the package over and look at the nutrition facts and the ingredients list. When you look down at the ingredients list, you might see that cauliflower or sweet potato aren't even in the first 5 ingredients. When you look at the added sugars, there's a whole bunch of added sugar in there. So doing your due diligence there is important. This is one product that I really like, these Harvest Snap Pea Crisps. For one serving, about 22 pieces, they're light and relatively small. You look here on the nutrition facts, dietary fiber is 4 grams and protein is 5 grams, with 0 grams of added sugar. So that checks out with a good, healthy option. Another snack that I love are these dried chickpeas. Vienna is one company, but there are lots of different options out there. These make for a good kind of salty, crunchy snack. Also great on top of salads, for example, for a crunch in your salad. All right, and on that note, I'm going to pass things over to Carol to open up the doors of the fridge and show us what's inside.
So before you do that, Ashley, I was also going to ask if you wouldn't mind commenting a little bit on the shelf life for some of these things, because I know like your grains, your whole grains, you can keep them for quite some time. Isn't that correct?
Oh, oops. Sorry. Yeah, absolutely. So all of these products that I have talked about, the benefit of them is one of the benefits is their shelf stability. So for example, like if you're looking at these beans, the expiration date is not until 2027. If you're looking at some of these grains, it might be 2024, 2025. So yes, very shelf stable. You can buy these either in bulk or in these packages, and they'll last in your pantry for a very long time. It's a great
If you
question.
go to like a Sam's or a BJ's, you could easily stock up and have them in your pantry for a long time.
BJ's or Sam's Club.
Yes, yep, exactly.
Yeah. Right, if you want to buy in bulk for a more inexpensive option.
Okay, moving on. Thanks, Shalou. Make sure it's Springsteen something. All right. Just make sure that I can remember. All right. So the first thing that we're going to talk about in the fridge is actually batch cook whole grains. So we love batch cooking one of the whole grains and having it ready to go for the week and storing it in a big Pyrex. And I'm actually going to move this across the kitchen because we're going to use this for our grand finale when we make a bowl with some of these foods that we're talking about. And the next thing that I would like to talk about is some of the milks and milk alternatives that are out there. So I already have a couple on the counter here, but so Ashley and I do really love low-fat dairy milk and soy milk for their high protein content. And there is some discord around dairy, and we do know that dairy might be protective when it comes to some cancers, like, believe it or not, premenopausal breast cancer and colorectal cancer, but then there is possibly a higher risk with higher intake of dairy and prostate cancer. So we usually recommend, if you do enjoy dairy, to limit it to 2 servings a day. So 1 serving would be about 1 8-ounce cup of milk, or an 8-ounce cup of yogurt, or 1 ounce of cheese. So, so that's low-fat milk, dairy milk, and then our soy milk, which there again is some myth around soy possibly being bad for hormone sensitive cancers, and this is actually not true at all. Soy might actually be likely protective of certain cancers, or it's completely neutral. So soy, I think out there in the world, is being called an estrogen or a pro-estrogen when it's actually an anti-estrogen. That, and it's actually really protective when it comes to cardiovascular disease. So we do love soy milk and other soy products that we're going to talk about later. And then oat milk is very popular in coffee and for a substitute for cow's milk. And a lot of the plant-based milks these days are fortified with calcium and vitamin D, but it is important to flip the packaging over and take a peek at the added sugar for these ones. So for example, this oat milk has 0 grams of added sugar, but this one has 9 grams of added sugar, which is almost 2 teaspoons. And there isn't anything inherently wrong with a little bit of added sugar every day, but if we're having a lot of products throughout the day with added sugar, those calories can add up without providing much nutrition in those calories. So, so that is our milks. And then the next area is tofu. So we have tofu that I've already prepared, but Ashley and I love keeping tofu in the fridge because it does last a long time and it's easy to whip up, especially if you buy the extra firm tofu. You don't have to drain a lot of the water out of it. You can season it and it gets a nice texture. So tofu we love. And then we also love eggs for a good protein source. I know egg prices are still up a little bit, but just another reminder about the front of packaging for eggs. There's a lot of information on the front of eggs and it can feel very confusing, but egg for egg, the nutrition content is actually pretty equal with the exception of some chickens that are fed flax in their grain that they're eating. So those eggs might have a little bit more omega-3, but in my opinion, it isn't enough to seek out the omega-3 eggs because it's actually a pretty small amount. And then the last word on dairy, we actually do love, for example, Greek style yogurt that's lower in sugar, that has the good probiotics that could be really good for our gut microbiome, which if our good bacteria in our gut are happy and healthy, then that might have a positive impact on inflammation in our body. So we love yogurt for the protein, the probiotics, and also some calcium and vitamin D. And then cheese can actually be a great high calorie, high protein option depending on your nutrition goals. And moving on to fruits and vegetables. So again, we want to encourage eating the rainbow. And for fruits and vegetables, it's great to get home from the grocery store and chop your vegetables then so that you have them ready to go for snacking and for cooking during the week. You can also buy them pre-sliced and that can cut down on some chopping during the week. I also love to promote the snack plate for a quick, easy, healthy lunch. So I already put one together. So you can see here that half my plate is vegetables. So we've got some already cut baby carrots, a sliced red pepper, sliced cucumber, and then a handful of those whole grain crackers to make up the quarter of the plate being whole grains, and then a quarter of the plate being protein from maybe a little bit of cheese, and then maybe a giant scoop of hummus on the plate to dip everything into. So there is our lunch snack plate. All right, and then one more tip for the fridge, which Ashley and I also love. If you stick a paper towel in the greens, it can actually help absorb some of the moisture and help the greens stay fresh longer. I really love, for example, this giant tub of greens from Market Basket. It's an organic 50-50 spring mix that's only $4, and we'll feed my family for the week. The last thing in the fridge that we're going to talk about is beverages. So water, of course, is always best for hydration, maybe with a little bit of fruit or a little bit of lemon or lime. But if water isn't doing it for you and you want to experiment with other sources of hydration or beverages, we really love Spindrift, which is pretty much carbonated water that has a little bit of real fruit juice added to it. Pretty low calorie, but very delicious. And then if you are looking to start replacing alcohol with something else, my husband and I do love beer, and the best company I think right now that's doing it right is this Athletic Brewing Company. Their non-alcoholic beers are fantastic. I think they taste really good. They've really been doing a great job with the different varieties that they're coming out with. And then another drink that I really love. This is not wine. Those of you who know me know that I love tart cherry juice. So tart cherry juice is packed with this phytochemical called anthocyanins that gives it this deep hue. These anthocyanins are a really potent anti-cancer phytonutrient. Tart cherry juice also has a little bit of melatonin in it, so great in a wine glass before bed. The last thing on the tart cherry juice is it's been studied actually for decreasing muscle soreness in runners, and it's also such a potent anti-inflammatory that there's been research on women who are taking tamoxifen and aromatase inhibitors after breast cancer, that tart cherry might actually help decrease some of that ache. And I think that is it for the fridge. Yeah, that is it for the fridge. So moving on to the freezer, I'm passing it off to Ashley.
Just bring this around.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Try to do this without keeping the freezer open the entire time, but
Making it beep at you.
yeah. All right, so if we're starting off with the whole grains, not so many whole grains in the freezer unless you are batch cooking those grains, like Carol mentioned with the quinoa. You can freeze those and take those out to use in a dish later, which is a great way to use leftovers if you're not going to eat them while they're fresh. One of the whole grain products that we really like are these whole grain frozen waffles. Great for an easy breakfast or snack. I like to top them with some nut butter or some yogurt and fruit for an added protein source. And then sometimes I will also make my own frozen pancakes to freeze, and using either a whole grain pancake mix or a high protein pancake mix like Kodiak cakes. I like to bulk them up. I'll put in a variety of different ingredients, maybe a tablespoon of ground flax for some of those omega-3s and a little more fiber. Sometimes I'll put in an extra egg or a few spoonfuls of Greek yogurt for a protein. I have leftover butternut squash. I'll mash that up, throw those in the pancake mix, or a banana that's about to go bad. I'll put those, slice that up or mash that up in the pancakes. Those last two ingredients keep the pancakes really moist if you are freezing them, so that when you take them out of the freezer, they're not dry. All right, so with proteins, there are, Carol and I both love cooking large batches of food so that we have leftovers either for the rest of the week or to throw in the freezer. So ways to get proteins would be maybe a pasta sauce with turkey, or a tofu curry, or a stew or a soup with chickpeas. Those are all great options for things that freeze really well and then reheat really well. One tip that I love for freezing leftovers is to label it. So Carol's going to zoom in here. Hopefully you can see. I always put the current date, how many days old it is, so that I know how quickly I need to eat it when I thaw it, and then what the actual item is in there. So you can see this is 1 serving of chicken curry and rice plus cabbage. And this helps to keep things organized so that when you pull it out and it's frozen a couple months later, you're not wondering, what the heck is this and how old is it? And it also, the date helps with this first in, first out philosophy that we use of trying to eat the oldest foods first to make sure that nothing goes bad in our freezer. There are lots of other protein sources that work really well in the freezer. So edamame is one. Carol mentioned all of the possible benefits of soy. And so edamame you can buy either pre-shelled or in the shell. These are great to snack on or to throw on top of a salad. My kids love the ones that are in the shell. Sometimes if you get home from school and they're starving and dinner's not ready, I will take the shallow ones out and steam them for 5 minutes, and they can snack on those while dinner is finishing. Another great option for a protein source is falafel. These are little balls that are made from chickpeas, another way to get more legumes into your diet. They're great on top of greens with some dressing, or in a whole wheat pita, for example, with some hummus and chopped veggies like cucumbers or red onion or tomatoes. And then I mentioned the salmon burgers earlier. Sometimes I'll make those homemade salmon burgers. You can also buy frozen salmon burgers to have on hand. And then, of course, veggie burgers. So black bean or vegetable-based, barley-based, grain and bean burgers. And then lastly, flash frozen fish or shrimp can be a good option that may be a little less expensive than buying fresh, and of course is going to last a lot longer to have available in your freezer at a moment's notice. So frozen fruits and vegetables. A lot of people have a misconception that frozen fruits and vegetables are not as helpful as fresh fruits and vegetables, but this is in fact not true. So those fruits and vegetables are flash frozen, so all the nutrients are preserved. And they can be a really great way to increase the variety of fruits and vegetables that you have in your diet. Carol mentioned having a lot of fruits and vegetables and eating the rainbow. Sometimes we're not able to buy a huge variety at once because we just can't consume that many fruits and vegetables, especially if you're living alone, before they might go bad. So filling in the cracks and supplementing with frozen options for fruits and vegetables is a great way to eat more of that rainbow, get more of that variety. So a few examples, frozen berries, frozen cherries, peaches, broccoli, peppers and onions to throw into a stir fry, for example. And we've talked a lot about eating the rainbow and eating variety. With fruits and vegetables, we know that there are a few families that are particularly beneficial, or that there's a lot of research behind as far as their cancer fighting potential. So Carol mentioned earlier with the tart cherry juice, the anthocyanins, that phytonutrient, the antioxidant properties that come from the deep hues, the rich dark colors. So the reds, the purples, the blues, for example, in frozen cherries, or in a berry blend, blueberries, strawberries, blackberries, and raspberries. Also a family of vegetables that there's a lot of research with their cancer fighting properties are the cruciferous vegetables. Those are vegetables like cauliflower, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, arugula, which we're going to use later, kale, and a lot of those also work really well frozen. Broccoli florets, for example. These are great to throw into a stir fry or perhaps saute up and mix into scrambled eggs to get a little bit of vegetable in with your breakfast. We also love frozen kale, which goes great into a smoothie. Frozen riced cauliflower, which you can use either instead of grain or rice, or those also actually work really well in a smoothie. And that whole family contains sulfur-containing compounds, sulforaphane, that have potent anti-cancer properties. So we recommend trying to eat between 3 to 5 servings of that cruciferous family vegetable a week. And then the last one I just wanted to mention, I mentioned the butternut squash and the pancakes. Butternut squash isn't a fan favorite in my family, so we often have leftovers when we make it, and I will mash that up and freeze it in little leftover, like reusable baggies, and can take that out to throw into pancake mix or into other ingredients when necessary. A few other quick tips about the freezer. So we often use ingredients in a recipe and we don't end up using the whole thing. For example, maybe you only need 1 tablespoon of tomato paste in a recipe, or you have a half a can of coconut milk left. Those can be frozen really easily instead of throwing them away. So for example, this is coconut milk in just a little Tupperware here, labeled of course with my blue painter's tape. And then next time you need just a little bit in a recipe, I have this right here. Tomato paste, pesto, other things like that, if you're not going to use it all, those are great to freeze in a ice cube tray. So I'll put them in, freeze them, once they're frozen, pop them out, and then freeze them in little baggies. So this, for example, is one little freezer or ice cube container of tomato paste. Herbs work the same way. Maybe a recipe calls for cilantro or basil or parsley, and you use maybe a quarter cup, but then you have the rest of the bunch. If you don't cook with those a lot, might wilt and go bad in your fridge. So same thing goes. You can wash those, dry them, and then either chop them up or put them whole into one of those freezer bags or a reusable bag and have those ready to go. Make sure you label the greens in particular, because otherwise when you go back in a couple months to use them, it's going to be very confusing. You can see I have mint here, for example, labeled here. And then just a quick note, since we're on the topic of herbs and spices, thank you, Carol. Spices also provide a great way to get more of those plant phytochemicals in, more cancer-fighting foods to sprinkle into food. So herbs and spices not only provide the benefit of making foods taste good, but also have those anti-cancer properties. So this is turmeric, for example, which Carol used in the dish that she's going to show. There's a lot of research on turmeric. Many of you have probably heard of it, but this is often used in Indian cooking, but can also be incorporated easily into everyday things you're making, like roasting vegetables with it, throwing it into smoothies or soups or stews. So on that note, I'm going to pass this over to Carol to kind of pull this all together into a delicious, helpful anti-cancer meal.
I don't know if I can just flip the camera, actually. We're gonna have Ashley handle it here. 1 second.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. All right, so hi again. We have our quinoa that we pulled out of the fridge earlier, and we're gonna start by layering this into Ashley and I's lunch bowls because we are probably both pretty hungry at this point. So I'm gonna put a couple scoops of the quinoa in each bowl. Sometimes to my grains, I actually like to add a little bit of acid to make them taste better. So this is a hack from the fridge that I actually forgot to share. I love to squeeze lemon and lime all the way into a Pyrex and strain out the pulp and add them to swing top bottles. So I always have some citrus ready to go in the fridge. So I have one of these that's lemon, another one that's lime that's in the fridge that's always ready to go so that you can add it to a variety of things when you're cooking and even add it to sauces like what I'm going to show you in a minute. So the next thing that we have is tofu. So this tofu bakes up beautifully in the air fryer. I have a tiny inexpensive air fryer and it's great for things like tofu, salmon burgers, lots of things go into our air fryer. So I'm going to scoop a little bit of this, actually used a bigger spoon. I just marinated this tofu in a little bit of olive oil, a tiny bit of cornstarch, and then I happen to have like a dry pesto seasoning and then some Italian herbs and some garlic powder and onion powder. And then this is just a tray of roasted vegetables that I mixed with a little bit of pepper and turmeric, which again, turmeric easy to add to a variety of different foods that you might be cooking during the week. And then here's our broccoli. Garlicky broccoli, again, some turmeric, and then we'll put a little bit of cherry tomatoes just for some color and a little bit of lycopene. And then for a little bit of crunch, we're going to add some sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds that have a little bit of those omega-3s too. And then what I think makes a bowl really delicious is the sauce. So I have two different sauces. The first one is a pesto that is made from actually arugula, walnuts, and nutritional yeast. So nutritional yeast you might not be familiar with, but it has a Parmesan cheesy flavor. And you can buy it in any grocery store. And it's a great substitute for Parmesan cheese and great in a pesto. So this pesto I'm going to add to one of the bowls. And then this other sauce is really delicious and it is a vegan Caesar dressing. And this recipe actually comes from a favorite local greatest of all time quarterback who doesn't live here anymore. But this is a delicious recipe. It's chickpeas, it's lemon for my swim top bottle, it's a little lemon rind, it's what else is in here? Some capers to give it like that saltiness, some cashews to make it creamy. Exactly. So I usually actually double this recipe when I make it because my kids will actually consume this because they're obsessed with that football player right now. So here are our 2 bowls that Ashley and I are going to have for lunch today. So on that note, I think we are going to call it, and I think we're going to stop the recording, and then I think we have the last 10 minutes open for questions.
So, and that we have plenty of. That was a wealth of information. That was so fantastic. It was hard obviously for people to take notes, and yes, you're going to have this video available to come back and watch as many times as you want. Yeah, but we have so many questions. So I'm going to fire away. So the first one is tahini okay to add to hummus?
Oh yeah, we love
Yes.
tahini. Tahini is also a good plant source of calcium and adds so much nice nutty flavor to things. Love it. Yeah.
In most recipes, it calls for tahini, but you don't have to add it. A lot of people don't have tahini in their cabinet, but yes, you absolutely can add it as another great plant-based component.
Thanks for that question. Should have had
Yeah,
to.
and you can also couldn't you stock your pantry also just with some sesame seeds? Right?
Yeah.
And then add that to your hummus.
Absolutely.
And we'll actually provide a list of these recommended snacks and foods. Fabulous suggestions. So I think maybe a list that we can provide, post it. Yeah.
We want to put a tip sheet together.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Recommended.
And then does flaxseed need to be refrigerated?
Flaxseed is definitely best refrigerated, especially the ground flaxseed. I like that best. It's most bioavailable and I think has just better like composition in foods. But I keep that in either just a bag or in a jar in the fridge.
I stick mine in the freezer, but I don't know how much more you're going to preserve the oils.
So technically, yes, I guess that could have been a fridge food as well, but you buy it in the regular aisles of the grocery store, not refrigerated. So, but yeah, great question.
Yeah, that's a great question. Oh, this is a nice one. I like this. Any suggestions for ice cream that's not dairy or milk based and tastes good?
There are a couple coconut ice creams that are really good, but also coconut is high in saturated fat. So if you're trying to avoid saturated fats, most ice cream really is going to be, higher in saturated fats and added sugars. It's all part of the balance, right? So we want to not think about any foods that we absolutely have to eat all the time or that we can't ever eat. It's all about the balance, trying to have a primarily whole food, plant-based diet, but enjoying some ice cream every once in a while, whether it's dairy or plant-based, is absolutely fine. Do you know of any other good?
There's a good, the ice cream place in my town center actually makes a really good soy-based ice cream. That's the only one that I've had that I have thoroughly enjoyed that isn't dairy-based.
So what's, remind me, is it FOMU? What's that milk? It's a FOMU, FOMU?
Oh, FOMU.
I don't know that one.
So there's in Fenway, they have a store there. And it's non-dairy ice cream, and I just can't remember right now off the top of my head.
Oatly also makes, Oatly is a brand of oat milk. They also make an oat milk based ice cream as well, that I have had, and that I think actually tastes pretty good too.
And what was that called, Ashley?
Oatly or any other oat milk based ice cream.
Good to know. That's great. And then I find that most of the plant-based milks have assorted additives, thickeners, sugar, and other chemicals. What is your view on that issue compared to cow's milk, which doesn't?
I think this is exactly right. There's a wide variety of plant milks out there, and flipping over the label to see if you can kind of minimize the number of ingredients that are in there is probably a good idea. There's definitely a lot of brands that have a shorter ingredient list. as you probably saw from our labels, we shop at a lot of different grocery stores. So there are definitely a wide variety of plant-based milks that don't have as many of like the gums and other things in them, if you wanted to avoid those.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why, for example, in my house, we have cow's milk, soy milk, and oat milk all together, because you're getting pros and cons, or, you know, some certain benefits or different benefits from different milks preference. Yeah.
I think so. A lot of these are asking for recipes, so I won't go into ask you for those right now, because we're going to hopefully have like a tip sheet, right, with all of the recipes. So some of the other questions are, does Carol recommend an air fryer?
I do. The reason my air fryer is so small is because I didn't think I was going to like it. I want a bigger one. So yes, I do recommend an air fryer.
I would second that. We use our air fryer, I would say almost daily. It's really good. Like Carol mentioned, for tofu and chickpeas, but also vegetables. We do a ton of air fried eggplant and just other vegetables that just can make it more interesting, a good, easy, quick way rather than roasting them.
I would use the air fryer for vegetables if it were bigger. So
yeah.
I was even thinking like the chickpea snack that you showed us earlier, the Vienna, like you could air fry that.
They're so good. Yeah, that football player Caesar salad recipe uses the air fryer for the chickpeas, and they come out so good. Yeah,
sounds delish. Okay, so let me see if I can ask a couple of more of these. I struggle with sugar in tart cherry juice. Recommendations on what to add to water it down.
Water.
Or sparkling water, like
sparkling
a
water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can you show us the brand of crackers again?
Yeah. Yes. Put those back.
Somebody said FOMO is sold in some stores like Whole Foods, which is good to know. Okay. Mary's
gone.
Crackers. I love that.
And the Akmoks have been around forever, and they're cheap. I love.
And they're available widely, like in most grocery stores.
Yes.
Turmeric is something to be careful about consuming for breast cancer, correct? What's the right balance?
To use it in food. Supplements are where you start to get into trouble, or if you were making a golden milk that was using maybe a teaspoon or more. So if you're using turmeric as part of a recipe in cooking, it's not going to be the dose that you're going to get from having a teaspoon at a time, or from having a supplement that is usually like 1 or 2 grams of turmeric or curcumin at a time. You're right. If you're taking tamoxifen, you shouldn't be taking a turmeric supplement, but using it in food and cooking is very different than the amount you would get from a supplement.
Okay, good to know. Any suggestions for non-alcoholic wine? The beer industry seems further ahead with tasty non-alcoholic beer. I was thinking the same thing.
I see ads for it, but to be honest, I don't have a recommendation. Wine is one of those ones where it's, part of the balance. Have a glass every now and then, a little resveratrol in there, and not, limiting to less than 2 for men and less than 1 for women a day. Less than that, even if you can, or avoiding altogether. But I think cutting back where you can is a good recommendation.
There do seem to be some good ones out there. I've had a couple of patients who have found some good alcohol-free, non-alcoholic wines, but that will be maybe a project for the next few months to try to find some good recs.
Try some.
Yeah.
We're on it.
And then a couple more, just really quick. Note your thoughts on intermittent fasting as part of a post-treatment approach to a healthier lifestyle.
Yeah. We'll start with the easier one, right? So a 13-hour overnight fast probably has some health benefits, and that is probably the easiest way to go. So that would mean stopping eating at 7 p.m. and your first meal is no earlier than 8 a.m. So probably pretty easy. It's probably fasting for 13 hours is probably helping bring blood sugar down, maybe helping bring insulin like growth factor 1 down, maybe helping insulin levels, just your body kind of coming back to homeostasis, having a 13-hour rest period. I'm not a huge proponent of the longer fasts. A lot of people are encouraging the much longer fasts to help with longevity, but we don't have that research in people yet. So I have a hard time telling people not to eat. So I think that's part of it.
Yeah, there is some research in reducing cancer treatment side effects and fasting. So we're kind of always staying up to date on that, but I think the research is not there yet to have any conclusive recommendations. Intermittent fasting also has to be so specific and tailored to the person and their other health conditions that I think it would be really hard to make kind of a general recommendation on intermittent fasting.
And does the 13-hour fast include tea, or is it okay to have tea after 7 p.m.?
It's the
Milk
calories.
or sugar. Yeah, just plain like
the
herb tea is
it's
fine.
calories that knock you out of fasting. So if it's
Yeah.
an herb or tea, or it'd be okay.
It depends on what you're putting in the tea, right? Yeah. And then the last one, what about no sodium rice cakes with hummus for a snack?
Sure.
Yeah. The whole grain rice cakes, like the brown rice cakes, of course, are going to be a better option. Yeah, than
Yeah. And everyone's saying this has been so super informative and just an absolutely wonderful session. It was like a marathon of amazing information. So thank you both so much. That was
You're welcome.
fabulous.
yeah.